Just looking at a brilliant parable that Jesus taught, and we're looking at chapter 25, verses 1 to 13. Let me read it to you. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 wise. The foolish ones took their lamps, but did not take any oil with them. The wise, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was a long time in coming, and they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight the cry rang out, "Here's the bridegroom, come out and meet him!" Then all the virgins woke up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out." "No," they replied, "there may be not enough for both of us and you. Instead, go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." But while they were on their way to buy the oil, the bridegroom arrived. The virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later the others came. "Sir, sir," they said, "open the door for us." But he replied, "I tell you the truth, I don't know you. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour." I want you to imagine what it would be like one day to stand face to face with the living God. Why don't you just close your eyes? Imagine, what would you say to him? I'm sorry, I've probably just shaken some of your hearts a little bit. Some of you have pacemakers. I'm sorry if I've caused permanent damage. You weren't ready, were you? You were just having a quiet moment on your own, thinking, and you were not expecting that to suddenly boom out. I'll ask you a question. Are you actually ready to meet the living God? Are you ready? Do you know, it's really hard, isn't it? I know it's really hard to think about the future. We live in a really material world, don't we? There's stuff that I can touch and feel. There's stuff that I can smell. There's stuff I can see. It's here. It's here. And so when we're thinking about the future, stuff that we can't really see, we can't really fully understand, it's kind of hard, isn't it? This world is material, and that's a good thing. So when we're asked to think about what's to come and we can't really see it, it's kind of hard. I know that's difficult. Jesus knows it's difficult. And so he teaches the brilliant parable, which we're going to have a look at today, which teaches one thing. Are you ready, he says, to meet me? Are you ready? I'm just going to introduce you to 3 of my friends. Perhaps you can identify with just one of these, but just have a listen to who these people are. There's this guy, Dan. He's 46. He's a bachelor, never married. He runs a really successful business. His life is pretty sorted. He's got a good pension, a big house. He's happy. And he hears that Jesus is asking him to be ready for the future. And he says, well, you know what? I'm not even sure I believe in God. And I'm not really bothered because my life's pretty good. Look at me. I've got it all. I'm not interested. So I'm not really going to think about the future. There's this girl, Sarah, I know. She's a teenager. She's 17. She's just finished her GCSEs. She's at school. And she's come to church with some of her friends. She's even sat on a Christianity Explore course. She's heard a little bit about this person of Jesus. It's kind of intrigued her. It's warmed her heart a bit. But then she's got to a point where she kind of says, you know, it's kind of interesting, but right now I'm busy, I've got my friends, I've got work, I've got more exams to do. I'm going to think about this in a few years' time. But right now, I'm pretty happy. Maybe I'll think about this later, because I know he's going to come back. I believe he will, but it's not going to be for a little while, so I've got more time. And then there's Will, one of my best friends. He's 28. He's a school teacher. He's getting married in 6 months' time. He's got the great job, the best school in the town. You know, and he gets to go on sports tours. He has a lovely house. He's got a brilliant, beautiful fiancée he's soon to marry. His life's pretty okay. He's been a Christian a long time. You know, he's actually a mature Christian, but life is just going so well for him. He's kind of got distracted by it, particularly with the wedding coming up. He's so focused on that. And the truth he knows is true. Jesus is coming back. He knows it's true, but he's kind of forgotten it, become distracted by the busyness of his life. Now, they're three very different people. I wonder if you can identify just with one of them. But here's something that's true of all of them. None of those three people, three friends of mine, are ready to meet God. All for different reasons they're not ready. But the point is, they're not ready. I wonder if you could just turn in your Bibles to Matthew chapter 24. Jesus is with his disciples. Disciples are the people who followed him around to learn from him. He's with them, and he's gathered them around him. It's in the last week of Jesus' life. Now, if you were in the last week of your life and you had your friends around you, what you're telling them really matters. So he's going to tell them something that really matters. And he's speaking to them about being ready for when he comes back to earth after he leaves. This really matters. Just have a look at chapter 24. What does he say in verse 30? What's going to happen? Can someone shout it out to me?
But the one who endures to the end will be saved.
Matthew 24, verse 30.
30.
At that time the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory.
Yeah. They will see the Son of Man, that's Jesus, coming with great glory. See, the first thing Jesus wants them to understand is that Jesus is going to come back. He is going to come back. When I was about 4 or 5, I was a little boy, and my dad was a climber. He used to go to the Alps on holiday with a climbing buddy. And I remember the time that he closed the door and he got in the car and drove to the airport to fly off to go on a climbing trip. And I remember, as a 4 or 5-year-old, thinking, I love my dad. I don't want him to go away. I want him to come back. But I knew he would come back. I knew it. Why? Because he loves me. I knew he'd go away for a period of time, but he promised he would come back, and he did exactly what he said. He came back and he saw me, and I remember when I ran up the drive and gave him a great hug, because I love him. He made me a promise. He came back. It's exactly the same with Jesus. When he promised his disciples that he would come back, he was going to come back because he's loved them. Just like my dad loved me and came back from his climbing holiday. So that's the first thing Jesus says to his disciples. He is coming back. It's a sure promise. Have a look at the second thing he says. Verse 42. Who knows when he's going to come back? What does 42 say? Can someone shout it out?
No one.
No one knows the day the Lord will come. Can you cast your minds back to the millennium? 13 years ago. It's New Year's Eve. 1999. I remember being with my friends. I was a teenager. We were at school in this nice house. He had a pool and tennis court, big house, hundreds of us at this party. And I remember this lady came. There was loads of people there I'd never met. And she was utterly convinced that Jesus was coming back that night. I mean, it was the year 2000. It would just make sense. It would be quite nice, wouldn't it? 2,000 years after he died and rose again, he's going to come back. And she went around this whole evening trying to convince us he's coming back. Well, the fireworks went up, midnight, the 1st of January, 2000. Can't see him. He hadn't come back. This lady was convinced she knew. But actually, if she knew her Bible, it's silly to be convinced, because what does it say? No one knows when he's going to come back. We know he's coming. Dad's coming home from climbing, but we don't know when he's coming. And what's the third thing? Verse 30. Just backtrack a little bit. What do we learn in verse 30 about what will happen when he comes back? We've read it already. They will all see him coming. They will all see him coming. I wonder if you're worried that you might miss Jesus. Could you miss the creator of the universe when he comes back to the world that he created? There was a little girl once, she was in church, and the vicar was talking about the future and Jesus coming back. And this girl really got struck by what he said, and she went away and she thought about it loads. Well, a few weeks later, her and her family were sitting on the plane. They were going to go to Australia to see a distant aunt. And this little girl was so excited. You know, the time you first went on holiday, you were absolutely excited about it. The family knew how much this meant to a little girl to fly to the other side of the world. And she sat there in the plane. Here she is, smiling. And then suddenly, she stopped smiling. And she just screamed, "No!" And her parents look at her and go, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" And she said, I don't want to go. And they say, "Well, why not? We're going to Australia. We're seeing your aunt. It's going to be the holiday of a lifetime." She says, "Did you not hear what the vicar said the other week in church? Jesus might come back, and if I'm in Australia, I'm going to miss him." Now, here's an innocent girl. She doesn't really understand. But this passage tells us when Jesus comes back, no one will miss him. He's not going to come back to England and the people in Australia aren't going to know. The whole world will know when the creator of the world comes back to his world. You won't miss him. And so, verse 44, what does he say in light of these things to his disciples? I'm coming back, no one knows when. When he comes, you'll all see me. Verse 44, are you ready? Well, it's in light of that he tells a parable, chapter 25. Now, Jesus tells loads of parables. A parable is simply a story with a meaning. He wants to kind of paint a picture so we understand what he's saying. He's teaching us truths. And he teaches us a parable with a meaning. And do you see in this parable, chapter 25, it's a parable about 10 virgins, 10 kind of bridesmaids. Can you picture the scene? 10 people who are about to get married. And it says there, verse 1, at that time the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. You know, imagine, this is sort of a church, imagine in British society, weddings happen where I'm the groom and I'm waiting here and the bride comes to meet me. But in ancient culture it worked differently. The groom and his family, they went to the bride's house and the bridesmaids came out and met them, and they had the wedding in the lady's house, the bride's house, and then they went back to the groom's house for the celebration. So in the story, here come the bridesmaids. They're coming out to meet the groom. They're waiting. But in the story, do you notice, there are 10 of them. 5 are wise and 5 are foolish. Jesus makes it really clear in this story. There are only 2 types of people in the world. There are wise people and there are foolish people. What are you? Are you ready to meet God? I want to tell you about a family of mine. It's a really typical family. They live in a neighbourhood just like we do here. Okay, they're called the Atkinson family. They're really good friends of mine. The dad's called Chris, the mother's called Helen. Chris works in a local publishing company. Helen's a teaching assistant at the local school, and they've got 3 boys: Jacob, Henry, and Jonah. Jacob's doing his A-levels. Henry's doing his GCSEs, and Jonah's just started at upper school. And here's the family. First day of the school holidays, they're sitting down at the table at breakfast, and they're just chatting and having a bit of banter, and a letter falls through the letterbox on the floor. So Jonah's the youngest. He goes and picks it up and brings it back to the table, and he's looking at it. That's unusual. The post normally comes at 11. I wasn't expecting this. And he opens the letter, and he says, this is unusual too. It's really quite a nice envelope. You know, the sort of ridge type, the colourful ridge type, that's really good paper. You don't get them very often. This is unusual. And he sees a coloured stamp on the back, but he doesn't know what it is. So he gives it to his dad, and his dad takes it. His dad opens it. And then his jaw just hits the floor. Oh my goodness. And all the family are like, Dad, what's the matter? What's the matter? He goes, you will not believe what this letter is. This letter is giving us an invitation to have tea with the Queen at Buckingham Palace. Oh my goodness! Let me just read it. And he reads out the letter, and right at the bottom it says, the cars will come to pick you up soon. Please make sure you're ready. Well, the Atkinson family are a pretty average, normal family, but when they got a letter like this, you can imagine how excited they were. So they rush off to get ready. The dad, Chris, he's desperate to get rid of all the mess in the hall, so he takes the shoes and the clothes, he shoves them in the cupboard. Mum doesn't want to be embarrassed when the Queen's entourage arrives, so she gets out a scrubbing brush and starts cleaning the hallway and polishing the banister. Jacob was at a party last night. He's got a stain on his shirt, so he gets his shirt, he chucks it in the washing machine. He wants to look really good. Henry's in the army cadets, so he gets out his shoes, he gets out his polish, starts shining them. They're all getting ready. Loads of activity. And what's Jonah doing, the youngest? Teenager, typical. Bothered. Just sitting there playing on his Xbox. He believes that he's going to go to a party, but what's the rush? Just chill out. I mean, I'm a teenager, chill. And the family are running around. Jonah, why are you not ready? Well, I know I've got to get ready, but he's not going to come today for us. So I've got loads of time, haven't I? And he's just waiting. Well, the Queen's entourage doesn't come. Not for one day, not for a second day, not for a third day. And eventually at the end of the week, still doesn't come. And the family all go to bed. It's midnight. And the doorbell rings. And Chris, the father of the household, wakes up. And he thinks, a load of kids messing around, coming back drunk for a party. Just ignore it. So he goes back to bed. But the doorbell rings again. All right, I've got to go and figure out who it is. So he walks down the stairs, and he opens the door, and there standing in the door is someone dressed in a suit, wide awake. Hello, Mr. Atkinson. The cars were with you in 5 minutes. You're coming for tea with the Queen. None of the family were expecting it, but he's knackered. He's half asleep still. So he closes the door and he sort of yawns and brushes the dust out of his eyes, and then it dawns on him. This is the moment. They've all been getting ready, and now is the moment they've been invited. So he runs upstairs and he calls, "Come on, guys, we've got to get ready." And they all rush to get ready. Well, Chris and Helen are happy because the hallway was all clean. Jacob's happy because his shirt's nicely ironed on the side. Henry's happy, his shoes are shining. How about Jonah? He suddenly panics. Flip! He hasn't got his shoes. The dog must have eaten one. He can only find one. His shirt's got a stain on it and one of the buttons missing. He can't find his cufflinks. He's having a bad hair day and he's hungry. He hasn't eaten. And so he's running around trying to get everything sorted in a complete panic. Everyone else is ready. But he's rushing around. He's not ready. "Dad, can I borrow a shirt?" "No, you can't. It's not going to fit you." "Mum, where's my shoes?" "I don't know. Where did you leave them?" He's not ready. And the rest of the family leave the house and the car pulls up. You know, the really nice shiny car. And they all pile into the car. And it starts driving off. And Jonah's still madly rushing, and he comes out the door, kind of hopping, putting on his shoe, doing up his shirt, stuffing food into his mouth, combing his hair, and he runs after the car and says, "Please, let me in." And the driver just slows and turns to him and says, "Jonah, I'm sorry, you weren't ready. We've got to go." And the car drives off, and Jonah's just left. Do you know, one day, Jesus will come back to this earth. We saw that in chapter 24. He's promised to. And one day, he's going to gather the whole world together. Everyone will know he's come back. And he'll take all the people who were ready, who knew him, and he'll say, "Come. Come to my banquet." Just imagine the most incredible banquet with the best food, the best entertainment, the best music. Whatever it is in life that you enjoy, multiplied 1,000,000 times. That's not even beginning to hit the level of excitement and joy that will be known at this banquet. And people, millions of them, from every tribe and nation will come. And he ushers them out and says, "Come to my banquet." And they all come through in droves and droves. And you can hear the singing and the joy and the food and the laughter. It's incredible. But there will come a time when Jesus will close the door. Would you be ready? Do you know when Jesus tells parables, when he tells stories, he's not trying to entertain. He's not just trying to impress us or entertain for a short while. Do you remember what a parable is? It's a story with a meaning. He's trying to get a point across. Something really matters to him. Remember, this is the last week of his life. So everything he says really, really matters. And he says this to his disciples, "Will you be ready?" Just have a look at verse 13 of our passage. After he's told the parable, he doesn't just stop. Well, that's a nice story. What does he say? Chapter 25, verse 13. "Therefore." What he's saying is, in light of everything I've told you, in light of the fact that in life there are two types of people. There are the wise, there are the foolish. In light of the fact that I'm coming back and no one knows when, but when I come back everyone will see me. In light of these facts, in light of the fact that not everyone will be ready, some people will be like Jonah, left. Some people will be shut out and the door will be closed. In light of all these things, what does he say? Therefore, verse 25, "Keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour." Do you know this story is told just at the end of Jesus' life, just before he goes to the cross? Why is this story told here? Because it's at the cross when Jesus Christ is crucified and bears the full weight of God's anger on him for my rebellion against him and your rebellion against him. It's at that moment that we can be accepted by God and we can be forgiven. Why does Jesus tell a story about being ready just before he goes to the cross? It's simple. Because it's at the cross that we are made ready to meet God. Because it's at the cross that we can be forgiven. Let me ask you a question as I close. What is stopping you from being ready to meet him? Because on that final day, he'll either say to you, "You're a fool," and he'll shut the door and say, "I did not know you." Or with great joy, he will say, "Welcome home. I do know you. Come to my banquet." Will you be ready? Because it's the most important day of our lives. Why don't you just take a few minutes now as the music plays quietly and just think about these things. Maybe you need to do business with God. Maybe there is something in your life that's stopping you being ready to meet him. You don't need to go home and go another day not being ready. Why don't you go home today ready and know the joy of knowing your God?